15 years ago, I was in university. I recall having a conversation once with a girl that I was dating. You see, we were both in art school, and she was an aspiring artist. I was an aspiring filmmaker. Well, even though I didn't end up becoming one, I still kept the hair. Okay. We were young, and we were madly in love. We had foolish but romantic dreams to become struggling artists when we graduated. Well, there was one night we were talking about our future, and we came to a topic about who we would and would not marry. And guess what she said? I will never marry a businessman. I said, why? She said, because they all look like this. At that time, running a business was the last thing on my mind. I was right in my element. I was going to be a filmmaker. So I told her, there's no way in hell I'm going to become a businessman. I promise. But 5 years later, I would have to break that promise. I started my first business and I never looked back. So, what happened to my dreams of becoming a filmmaker? And how did this struggling artist end up becoming a serial entrepreneur? Well, sometimes our dreams may get interrupted. Sometimes, as we know, life doesn't always turn out as we expect. Beneath the success that people see was actually a series of painful and unfortunate circumstances that led me here today. Today, I'd like to share my story with you, especially to some of you who might have felt abandoned, or you may be feeling lost, or rejected, or maybe perhaps you felt like you didn't stand a fair chance in life to achieve your dreams or your passion because you were simply not good enough. Well, here is my story. When I was 6, I recalled one night that my dad came to pick me up from kindergarten. I think he was already in a very bad mood because when he came, my teacher complained that I was very naughty in class, and he grew so mad at me. So mad that on the way home, he kicked me out of his car and left me at the side of the road and he drove off. I was only 6 years old. It was the first time I learned what it felt like to be abandoned. But luckily for me, my mom came back and rescued me. When I went home, I thought that my dad would at least feel remorseful for what he did. But instead, he dragged me to the kitchen, put my head on the sink, and put a chopper in my neck. And he threatened to chop it off if I ever dared to misbehave again. I was a 6. I was only a kid, and I was traumatized. The fear would continue to grow as my dad got increasingly violent, especially when his business was not doing well. Sometimes he would release his temper in the form of hitting things. Sometimes it would be breaking mirrors, and sometimes it would be hitting my mom. I grew up really hating my dad. By the time I turned 16, I would have been kicked out of my house 6 times. And each time he threw me out, he would chase me out with a chopper in his hands. And you must be thinking, what did I do to piss him off so badly? I wasn't a really bad kid. I wasn't getting into trouble. I wasn't smoking or taking drugs. It was none of that. He kicked me out every time he found out that I went skateboarding. He hated the image of skateboarders, and I didn't understand why. Okay, maybe that's why. But I couldn't even get acceptance for riding a skateboard. Well, I struggled, and I really wanted out of this toxic environment. Until one day, on the last time that he kicked me out, I had enough. I shouted back that I'll never ever return home again. I ended up being a waiter for 6 months in a hotel before enlisting in the army. And those days, I remember taking a bus home from Raffles City to rented flat at Woodlands, thinking, how did I end up here? Why was I born in this family? Life is unfair. Beneath his violent streak and his bad temper, he actually had a glimpse of a loving father. So in one of his moments when he was slightly doing better in his business, he asked if I wanted to study in Australia. And of course I jumped at the chance, the freedom, but most importantly, away from this toxic environment. And so I left. When I went there, I found my dream. I fell in love with filmmaking, and I was pretty good at it that my teacher actually offered me a job to teach in the university after I graduated. At that time, I thought I had it made. I was right in my element, and I was fulfilling my dream. But all this changed with one phone call. I found out that my dad was diagnosed with the final stage of cancer, and my family needed me to go back to help out with the family business, which was riddled with debt. I was torn. I was so close to achieving my dreams, and yet I felt it snatched under me. But I couldn't leave my family or my mom in the lurch, and so I packed my bags, packed my dreams, and I returned back to Singapore. The next year would be the darkest time of my life. I fell into depression. I started to drink and smoke heavily because here my dad had cancer, and here we had the worst father-son relationship. We kept on fighting, and the fighting just made his illness worse. Whenever I tried to help, it just ended up with a fight. Until one day, we went to China together for a business trip. Again, we fought. He drank and he got drunk and he smashed up the mirrors in the hotel room that we were staying at. I ended up wandering the streets of Guangzhou that night, not daring to return. Eventually, I went back. I told my dad that this wasn't working out. I was just making his illness worse, and I think I should leave. My mom agreed, and once again, I headed for Australia. But this time, the window to get my PR through my arts degree was over. The only way that I can stay in Australia to get my PR was to study accounting and IT. And I so badly wanted to stay there that I signed up for both. I signed up for the Masters of Professional Accounting and IT. And for an art student, that was hell. I don't recommend it. But I did whatever it took. 6 months later, I would have been celebrating my birthday with some of my friends in a cafe at night. And then I received a call. It was a Singapore number. And I figured that it was probably from my family. So I excused myself, I went downstairs, and I picked up the call. It was my mom. Now, Papa wants to talk to you. And she passed the phone to my dad. Now, happy birthday. He sounded really bad. It's as if he knew that his life was coming to an end. And then the next few words that he said, I wish that I would have heard it earlier. But I thank God that he said it anyway. He said, now, Papa is sorry for the things that you had to go through. But I just want you to know that I actually really love you. At that time, it was the first time in 25 years that I heard those words. I completely broke down and I completely lost it. But at the same time, all that hatred, toxic, negative feeling just dissipated away. I felt liberated. It was a complete closure between my father and I. I couldn't rejoin my friends because I was crying like a baby. In the next few days, I couldn't go back to university. By the end of the week, I packed my bags and I returned back to Singapore. And that was when I saw him for the last time. Long story short was that I went back into the business. It was tough. I had no business experience. I knew nothing about menswear. The business was more than $500,000 in debt. I did not know where to begin. I felt alone. A lot of times I felt like at one moment I was packing stocks and delivering it to the stores. The next moment I'll be alone in China, going visiting factories. And worst of all, I hated to be a salesman on the floor. I couldn't even speak to people, let alone do sales. But I did it for 2 years, and it changed me. It was after 2 years that the business finally turned around, And it was then when I came out to start my own business, Benjamin Barker. Today, we are very blessed that the business just celebrated our 10 years anniversary, and we have won multiple business awards, been on newspapers, and we've grown from one hole in the wall store to having 15 stores across 5 countries. We're very blessed to give back to the community. And from a team of 2, today we have grown to a family of 80 and growing. And my message to you today is this. Many of us will go through detours in our life. We will face rejections, and our dreams and passion may be interrupted. And most likely, we will face pain in our lives. And some of us will think this as dream killers. But perhaps they were not dream killers, but rather dream planters. You see, the struggles that I had was necessary to make me the person that I am today. The struggles, no matter how painful or challenging it was needed to make me strong, to teach me forgiveness, to teach me to live with grit and grace. Be it my relationship with my father or the disruption of my dreams, today I've learned to become a better leader, a better father, and a better person. So I'd like to leave you with this. Let your dreams or your passion be your fuel, and let your pain, your challenges, your struggles be the fertilizer to plant the seeds of success for your future. And by the way, remember that girlfriend that said that she will never ever marry a businessman? Well, she did. And today, we have a beautiful family. Dreams come true. Thank you.